The rule I broke was number 5. I want to be clear about that up front, because I think it matters not for my sake, but for yours. I followed every other rule Garrett left me. Every single one. For 19 nights straight. I locked the deadbolts at 3:13. I wrote normal cycle when the pipes screamed. I lied about the plumbing to a woman with a toddler on her hip, and felt the specific guilt of watching a mother walk back to her car, looking at me like I was the worst kind of person. I did all of it. I was good at the job. But on the 20th night, I read the log entry I wasn't supposed to read. And now I'm telling you about it because I don't know what else to do with what I saw. My name is Elena Voss. I'm 34. I work the overnight shift at a Citgo station off Route 33 in Coalinga, California, for 22 nights in the fall of last year. I don't work there anymore. I don't think anyone does. Let me back up. Coalinga is the kind of town that exists because a highway goes through it. That's not an insult, it's geography. It sits in the San Joaquin Valley, flat in every direction, pinned between the 5 and the 33. In the daytime, it smells like cattle and dust, and the faint chemical sweetness of the oil fields to the west. At night, it smells like nothing, just cold air and asphalt. I grew up there, left at 19, failed at life in Sacramento for a decade, and came back with a divorce settlement that covered exactly 2 months of rent on a studio apartment near Harris Ranch. I needed a job. The Citgo on Polk Street had a sign in the window. Overnight clerk, full-time benefits after 60 days. I applied on a Tuesday. The owner, a man named Phil Romer, who I met exactly once, and who spoke to me primarily through a regional manager named Dana, hired me the same afternoon. The only condition was that I had to train with the outgoing overnight clerk for 1 shift before he left. That was Garrett. Garrett Hewell was 51 years old and looked 65. He had the kind of face that made you think of drought, dry, lined, tight around the mouth. He wore the same outfit every time I saw him. Khaki work pants, a gray polo with the Citgo logo ironed on, and a watch with a cracked face that he checked more than anyone I've ever seen check a watch. I showed up for my training shift at 10:45 p.m. on a Wednesday. The store was empty. The fluorescent lights buzzed the way they do in every gas station in America, that flat, bluish hum that makes everything look like a waiting room. The shelves were stocked. The register was on. The coffee station was half cleaned. Normal. Garrett was standing behind the counter with a laminated index card in his hand. Elena? Yeah. I'm Garrett. I'm going to show you where everything is, and then I'm going to give you this. He held up the card. And then we need to talk about the bathrooms. I almost laughed. The way he said it, the bathrooms, like he was a doctor about to deliver a diagnosis. Okay, I said. He walked me through the shift. Register procedure, coffee rotation, cooler restocking, fuel delivery schedule. How to reset pump 3 when it jammed. Where the mop bucket lived. How to arm the security cameras. There were 4, all interior, none covering the bathrooms or the east exterior wall. He explained that gap before I could ask about it. Cameras don't point outside on that side. Phil's decision. Don't ask him about it. He won't answer, and he'll get weird. Weird how? Like a man who doesn't want to think about something. You know the look. I did. I'd seen it on my ex-husband's face every time I mentioned therapy. Garrett showed me the cleaning supplies, the first aid kit, the location of the breaker panel, and the emergency number for the regional manager. Then he stopped behind the register, set the laminated card on the counter between us, and looked at me with the expression of a man about to do something he found distasteful but necessary. This is the part, he said. He slid the card across. I picked it up. 6 rules, typed in a plain font, laminated in the kind of thick plastic sleeve you'd get at an office supply store. No header, no title, no signature, just the rules. I read them, then I read them again. "Is this a joke?" I said. "No. Someone's hazing the new hire. I've worked here 11 years, Elena. I have never once played a joke about the bathrooms." He wasn't angry. He wasn't dramatic. He said it the way you'd say, "I have never once touched a hot stove on purpose." Simple autobiographical fact. 3:13 a.m., I said. 3:13. Why? I don't know. You've worked here for 11 years, and you don't know why 3:13? I know that it's 3:13. I know what happens if you don't lock them. That's 2 things, and that's enough. I looked at the card again. Rule 2 caught my eye, the one about not asking someone to leave if they were already inside. What do you mean, wait for the log to update? The maintenance log. It hangs on a hook on the wall between the 2 bathroom doors, outside. You've seen those clipboards at gas stations, date, time, initials, condition. Ours is the same, except it fills itself in sometimes. He said this like he was telling me the ice machine was unreliable. It fills itself in. Yes. With what? Entries. Times and initials that aren't yours. Sometimes the condition column says things that don't make sense. You're not supposed to read those entries. That's Rule 5. When you unlock at 3:52, if there's a new line on the log that you didn't write, flip to a fresh sheet and start over. Don't read it. Garrett. I know how it sounds. Do you, though? He pulled out his wallet. It was old leather, cracked along the fold. He opened it and removed a small photograph, not printed from a phone, but an actual developed photo. The kind with the white border and the slight curve from being kept in a tight space for years. He held it up. It was a photo of a clipboard. The image was slightly blurry, taken at night under poor light. But I could read the maintenance log clearly enough. A grid of lines. Most were normal dates, times, Garrett's initials, the word clean or stocked in the condition column. But one line, about 3/4 down the page, was different. The date was correct. I could see it match the others around it. The time read 3:27 a.m. The initials column contained 3 letters I didn't recognize. And the condition column said, "Passenger in transit, do not delay." I looked at Garrett. "I took that photo 6 years ago," he said. "First week I started reading the entries I wasn't supposed to read. Took me another 4 years to stop." Stop reading them? Stop wanting to. He put the photo back in his wallet. The bathrooms are not just bathrooms, Elena. I don't know what they are, exactly. But people use them, and I don't mean customers. I mean people who arrive without cars and leave without footprints. They come in during the window, 3:13 to 3:52. The log records it. The water runs. And if you leave them alone, everything is fine. The rules are about leaving them alone. And if you don't, then the log starts recording you. Garrett left at 6 a.m. He shook my hand at the door, and his grip was firm, but his fingers were cold, even though the store was warm. "You'll be fine," he said. "Just follow the card." "That's it? No other advice?" He thought about it. Genuinely thought. The way people do when they're sifting through years of experience for the one thing worth passing on. "Don't get curious," he said. "Curiosity is what the log records first." Then he walked across the parking lot, got into a white Tacoma with a dented tailgate, and drove east on Polk Street. I watched his taillights, until they disappeared. I taped the laminated card to the side of the register where I could see it without reaching. The first 4 nights were nothing. I mean that literally. Nothing happened. I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I restocked the cooler, I mopped the floor, I sold coffee and cigarettes and gas to long-haul truckers and shift workers, and one very polite older man who came in every night at 2 a.m. for a pint of chocolate milk and never said a word. I locked the bathrooms at 3:13. I unlocked them at 3:52. In between, I heard nothing. The maintenance log showed only my own entries: date, time, my initials, clean. The clipboard hung on the wall between the 2 bathroom doors, exactly where Garrett said it would, swaying slightly in the wind when the valley gusts picked up after midnight. Ordinary. By the 4th night, I'd decided Garrett was either mentally ill or pulling an elaborate long-term prank on new hires as his retirement gift to himself. The photo was probably staged. The rules were a test to see how gullible I was. On the 5th night, I locked the bathrooms at 3:13 and went back inside to restock the hot dog roller. At 3:19, the pipes in the east wall began to groan. I've heard pipes groan. Every building I've ever lived in has made that sound at some point. The deep hydraulic moan of water moving through old infrastructure. It's a pressure sound. It's a physics sound. It is not by itself frightening. But the bathrooms were locked. Both deadbolts thrown. No one had entered them since I'd checked and cleaned them at 2:45. The closest customer was a woman at pump 2 who was filling up her Subaru and hadn't gone near the east wall. I stood behind the register with a package of hot dogs in my hand and listened. The groan cycled. Low, then high, then low again. It sounded like the pipes were clearing, like someone had turned on a faucet full blast and the system was adjusting. But no one was in there. No one could be in there. I had the only keys. I looked at the laminated card. Between 3:13 and 3:52 a.m. If you hear water running in either bathroom, do not investigate. Write normal cycle on the next blank line of the log and initial it. I put the hot dogs down. I walked to the front door, pushed it open, and stepped into the parking lot. The air was cold and dry. The woman at pump 2 was hanging up the nozzle. She didn't look at me. I walked around the east side of the building. The 2 bathroom doors were closed. Deadbolts engaged. The chrome handles reflected the parking lot lights. Between the doors, the clipboard hung on its hook, the maintenance log fluttering slightly. From behind the left door, the men's room, I could hear water running, not dripping, running. A full, open faucet, steady and clear. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds. My hand didn't move toward the door. I want to be honest about that. It wasn't courage or obedience that stopped me. It was the sound. Because under the running water, barely audible, there was a second sound. A low, arrhythmic tapping. Not mechanical, not pipe noise. It sounded like someone drumming their fingers on the underside of the sink basin. I took the pen from my shirt pocket, flipped to the current page of the maintenance log, found the next blank line, and wrote October 7th, 3:19 a.m. EV, normal cycle. I initialed it and walked back inside. The water stopped at 3:34. The tapping stopped 3 minutes before that. I didn't go back outside until 3:52. When I unlocked the bathrooms with the deadbolt key and pulled both doors open from arm's length. The way you'd open an oven you thought might be too hot. The men's room was empty. The faucet was off. The floor was dry. The toilet was clean. The mirror was intact. The trash can was empty. But the soap dispenser, a white wall-mounted unit that I had filled to the top at 2:45, was completely empty. Not low, not used. drained, as though someone had pumped it dry. A thin residue of pink soap traced a line from the dispenser down the wall to the floor, ending in a small, perfect circle on the tile. I looked at the maintenance log. Below my normal cycle entry, there was a new line. Different handwriting. Smaller, neater, pressed harder into the paper. The date matched. The time read 3:31 a.m. The initials were 3 letters, REM. The condition column read, processed outbound, 7 minutes delay, soap fault. I stared at it. If there is a new entry you did not write, do not read it. Flip the page and start a fresh sheet. I had already read it. Rule 5, broken without thinking, the way you read a billboard before you realize you're doing it. But it was only the 5th night, and I didn't know yet what that meant. I told myself it was nothing. I flipped to a fresh sheet, started a new page, wrote the date at the top, and went back inside to finish the hot dog roller. I didn't sleep well that morning. The phrase soap fault kept turning over in my head like a stone in a tumble polisher, getting smoother and stranger every time I looked at it. Night 6, nothing. Night 7, nothing. Night 8. I locked the bathrooms at 3:13. At 3:16, the water started again, this time in the women's room, right side. Faucet, full blast. I wrote normal cycle on the log at 3:17 and went back inside. I didn't listen at the door. I didn't want to hear the tapping. At 3:52, I unlocked. The women's room was clean, faucet off, floor dry. But the mirror above the sink had a smear on it, not handprints, not condensation. A long, horizontal streak across the center, as if someone had pressed their forearm flat against the glass and dragged it to the right. The soap dispenser was half empty. The log had a new entry below mine. I did not read it. I flipped the page. Fresh sheet. Walked inside. Finished my shift. That afternoon, lying in my apartment with the blinds down and the TV on mute, I called Garrett. His number was on the employee contact sheet taped inside the supply closet. I hadn't planned to call him. My thumb just did it. He picked up on the 4th ring. Elena. How'd you know? Nobody else has this number and a reason to call. The water started. Night 5 and again last night. Silence for a moment. Then, did you read the log? The first time, not the second. He exhaled. Not a sigh, a measured breath, like he was processing the information and filing it somewhere. Once is usually fine, he said. Everyone reads it once. It's the second time that gets you on the list. What list? Don't read it again, Elena. Garrett, what list? The log has 2 sections, the part you can see and the part underneath. The top sheet is for transit entries. Below that, under the page, printed on the backing board of the clipboard, there's a second list. I found it in year 3. It's a roster. Names, dates, and times. Some of the names are people I recognized. Old clerks. Phil's brother, who died in 2009. A woman who used to deliver fuel on Tuesdays. A roster of what? Of scheduled passengers. People who haven't transited yet, but will. Every name has a date next to it. Some dates are in the past. Some are in the future. My mouth was dry. I went to the kitchen and poured water from the tap and drank half of it before I spoke again. Is your name on it? It was. November 19th. That's why I quit. The glass was sweating in my hand. I put it on the counter. That's 3 weeks from now, I said. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know. But I won't be at the station. That's the first thing. His voice was steady. Elena, listen. The log records attention. That's what Garrett. what I figured out over 11 years. The system, whatever uses those bathrooms, it doesn't care about you unless you care about it. The rules aren't protection. They're insulation. You lock the doors, you write normal cycle, you don't read the entries. And the system treats you like furniture, like a toll booth arm that goes up and down. It doesn't think about you any more than you think about a doorknob. And if you read the entries, then you're not a doorknob anymore. You're a person who's paying attention. And people who pay attention are people. And people are passengers. I didn't call Garrett again. I went back to work that night 9, with a feeling in my chest like a low-grade electrical current. The kind of anxiety that isn't panic, but isn't calm either. The kind that sits in the space behind your sternum and hums. I taped a sticky note over Rule 5 on the laminated card. Don't even glance. I started my shift, restocked, mopped, sold a pack of Camels to a man with oil-stained hands, who told me his truck was overheating and asked if I had coolant. I did. He paid in cash, exact change, and I didn't think anything of it at the time. At 3:13, I locked the bathrooms. Deadbolts. Didn't knock first. The water started at 3:15. Both rooms this time. I could hear it from inside the store, a stereo hiss. The sound of 2 faucets running in parallel, slightly out of sync. Left side pitched a little lower than the right. I wrote normal cycle on the log at 3:16 and went back inside. I made coffee. I watched the security cameras 4 angles, all interior, none showing the east wall. The store was empty. The parking lot was empty except for my car and the coolant man's truck, which was still parked at the far edge of the lot near the air pump. At 3:28, the water stopped. At 3:29, someone knocked on the front door. I looked up from the register. A man was standing outside the glass door, mid-40s, average height, wearing a gray windbreaker and dark pants. He had a small duffel bag over one shoulder. He looked tired, not exhausted, just the kind of tired that comes from being awake at the wrong hour. He knocked again politely and pointed at the door handle. The door wasn't locked. It was a 24-hour station. The door was never locked. He could have just walked in, but he knocked, and he waited. I waved him in. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, and the first thing I noticed was that he wasn't cold. It was 41 degrees outside. I'd checked the thermometer on the register an hour ago, and he was wearing a thin windbreaker with no layers underneath. No goosebumps, no flushed nose, no visible breath when he'd been standing outside. "Evening," he said. "Morning technically," I said, because I default to mild correction when I'm nervous. He smiled. It was a normal smile. "Fair enough. Morning. Is the restroom available?" My stomach dropped. "Plumbing's out," I said. "Sorry. Should be fixed by morning." He looked at me for a moment. Not suspicious, not angry, just considering, like he was consulting some internal schedule and checking whether this delay was accounted for. "That's all right," he said. "I'll wait." "It won't be fixed tonight," I said. "There's a truck stop about 12 miles east on 198. They're open all night." "I don't mind waiting," he said. He walked to the coffee station, poured himself a cup black, no sugar, and brought it to the counter. "How much?" $1.69. He reached into his windbreaker pocket and set exact change on the counter. A dollar bill, 2 quarters, a dime, a nickel, and 4 pennies. He placed each coin separately, in a neat line, like a pharmacist counting pills. I looked at the coins. The pennies were dark, not corroded, but old, the kind of patina that takes decades. I picked one up as I swept them into the register drawer. The date read 1987. "Thank you," he said. He took his coffee to the small bench by the window, the one we kept for customers waiting for tire air or fuel deliveries, and sat down. He set the duffel bag on his lap. He didn't take out a phone. He didn't look at the magazines. He sat with his hands around the coffee cup and watched the east wall of the store, where the bathroom access hallway would be if the bathrooms had interior access, which they didn't. He was watching the wall where the bathrooms were on the other side. I checked the clock. 3:33 a.m. If a customer inside the store asks to use the bathroom during lockout, tell them the plumbing is broken. If they insist, show them the sign. Do not explain the real reason. Do not apologize. He hadn't insisted. He was just sitting, waiting, politely. I pretended to clean the counter. I wiped down the hot dog roller. I checked the coffee level. Every 30 seconds, I glanced at him. At 3:41, he spoke without looking at me. "It's hard to wait, isn't it?" "Excuse me?" "For something you know is coming. The waiting is always worse than the thing." He sipped his coffee. "I've been waiting for a long time." "For the bathroom?" He smiled again. Same normal smile. "Sure." At 3:50, he stood. He set the half-finished coffee on the bench beside him and picked up his duffel bag. He walked toward the front door and stopped. "You're going to unlock at 3:52? He said. I didn't answer. I hadn't told him the time. I hadn't mentioned any schedule. There was no sign in the store referencing bathroom hours. "I'll go around," he said. "Thank you for the coffee." He walked out. I watched him through the window. He turned left and walked along the front of the building, then disappeared around the east corner. At 3:52, my alarm went off. I walked outside with the key. The men's bathroom door was open. Not unlocked, not ajar, open. The deadbolt was still engaged. I could see the bolt extended from the door frame, but the door was standing fully open, swung inward against the wall. The deadbolt had been pulled through the frame, splintering the wood slightly around the strike plate. Not kicked, not forced with a tool. The metal bolt had simply passed through the wood, as though one of them had briefly stopped being solid. The bathroom was empty. The faucet was off. The floor was wet, not standing water, but damp, like someone had mopped it recently. The soap dispenser was full. The mirror was clean. The duffel bag was sitting on the floor next to the toilet. I looked at it for a long time. It was dark gray, nylon, with a broken zipper on the side pocket. It looked like the kind of bag you'd buy at a Walmart for $15 and use until the strap broke. It was slightly heavy when I nudged it with my foot. Something inside shifted something soft, with weight, like folded clothing around a dense core. If you ever find something left behind in a bathroom that does not belong to a living customer, you'll know place it in the lost and found bin under the register. Do not describe it in the log. Do not keep it. I picked it up by the strap. I didn't open it. I carried it inside, placed it in the lost and found bin, a plastic tub under the register that, until that moment, had contained only a pair of sunglasses, a phone charger, and a child's left shoe, and I slid the bin back under the counter. I checked the maintenance log. There were 2 new entries below my normal cycle line. I did not read them. I flipped the page. Fresh sheet. Wrote the date. Went inside. The duffel bag sat in the bin for the rest of my shift. I could feel it under the counter the way you feel a spider you've seen, but lost track of a low, persistent awareness that never fully leaves your body. At 7 a.m., The day clerk, a college kid named Marco, who worked mornings, came in and started his routine without looking at the bin. I clocked out. I drove home. I didn't look back at the building. Night 10 through night 14, I developed a system. At 3:10, I'd go outside, check both bathrooms, confirm empty, walk back inside. At 3:13, I'd go back out and throw the deadbolts. I'd come back inside and put on headphones, not playing music, just wearing them. So I had a reason not to hear the water. At 3:16 or 3:17, I'd go out, write normal cycle on the log, and come back without looking at any other entries. The water ran every night. Sometimes one bathroom, sometimes both. Sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for 30. Once, on night 12, it ran for the full 39 minutes. 3:13 to 3:52, unbroken. And I sat behind the register with my headphones on and my hands flat on the counter and my eyes on the clock, and I didn't move. At 3:52 each night, I'd unlock. The bathrooms were always empty. The faucets were always off. But each night, something small was different. Night 10. The toilet paper roll in the women's room had been used. About 8 squares, torn neatly. Night 11, a wet footprint on the men's room floor. 1, left foot, bare, adult-sized. Night 12. Both mirrors had been tilted, not broken, not removed, but angled, tilted about 5 degrees downward, as if someone had adjusted them to see the floor instead of their face. Night 13. The soap dispensers in both rooms were full, despite the fact that I had not refilled them. Night 14. A receipt was sitting on the edge of the women's room sink. Not a Citgo receipt, not a gas receipt. A small square piece of thermal paper with no header, no store name, no barcode. Just a short column of text. I picked it up. It read, TXN 10-14/03-2741 Unit F-East Class. Inbound status. Delayed clerk. Present note. See roster/pending reassignment. I put the receipt in the lost and found bin. I did not log it. That was the night I started to be afraid. Not of the bathrooms. I'd been afraid of those since night 5. I was afraid of the phrase, clerk present, because it meant the system knew I was there. It knew I was at the station. It could tell the difference between an empty building and a building with a person inside it. And the word reassignment. Garrett had told me about the roster, the list on the backing board of the clipboard. Names and dates. People scheduled for transit. Pending reassignment. Whose? Night 15 broke the rhythm. I was restocking the chip display at 1:40 a.m. when a car pulled in, a dark green sedan, older model, something mid-2000s. It parked at Pump 1. A woman got out. She was maybe 60, wearing a quilted jacket and jeans, her gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She filled up, came inside, grabbed a bottle of water and a bag of peanuts. Evening, she said. Morning, I said. Force of habit now. She paid with a debit card. Normal transaction. The register hummed. The receipt printed. She took her items and paused. I used to work here, she said. At this Citgo? It wasn't a Citgo then. It was a Texaco. Long time ago. 87, 88. My husband and I ran it. She looked around the store with the expression of someone visiting a childhood home that's been remodeled. Recognition and loss mixed together. The bathrooms still outside? Yeah. We wanted to put them inside. Phil's father, that was the owner then, Phil Sr., he wouldn't allow it. Said they had to stay where they were. Said the plumbing was laid for that spot specifically, and it would cost too much to move. She was standing at the counter, not leaving. Her car was idling outside. The pump had clicked off. I always thought that was strange, she said. The plumbing excuse. Because when we took over, the first thing I did was check the pipes. I do that, I'm practical. I wanted to know the infrastructure before we invested. And the pipes under those bathrooms aren't connected to the main water line. I looked at her. They run straight down, she said. 8 feet deep into the ground. And they stop. No junction. No connection to the street main. No connection to anything. The water in those bathrooms comes from somewhere, but it doesn't come from Coalinga. She zipped her jacket. Anyway, nice to see the place is still standing. You have a good night. She left. Her taillights turned east on Polk and vanished. I watched them go, and then I walked to the east wall of the store and put my hand flat against it. The wall was warm. Not hot, not alarming. Just warm, the way a wall is warm when there's a dryer running on the other side, or a furnace working below. A low, biological heat, as if the building itself was circulating something. I pulled my hand away and went back to the register. Night 17 was when the emotional trap hit. I was writing normal cycle on the log at 3:18. Water running in the men's room, steady hiss, nothing unusual when a car pulled into the parking lot. Fast, not reckless. A silver Honda with a dent in the rear quarter panel. It stopped near the front door, and a woman got out almost before the engine died. She was in her late 20s, dark hair, wearing scrubs the kind nurses wear, or vet techs or dental hygienists. She had a phone in one hand, and she was crying. Not sobbing. The quiet, exhausted kind of crying where the tears run, but the face barely moves because the person is too tired to make expressions anymore. She came straight to me. I was still standing by the bathroom doors, pen in hand. "Please," she said. "Please, I need to use the restroom. I've been driving for 4 hours, and every place is closed, and I just—" She stopped, pressed the heel of her hand against her eye. "I just need 2 minutes." I looked at her. She looked real. She looked like a real woman having a real bad night. Her scrubs had a name badge clipped to the pocket, Sarah, Central Valley Veterinary. Her shoes were the kind of foam clogs that people in medical professions wear, scuffed and slightly stained. Her car had a parking permit sticker on the windshield. "Plumbing's out," I said. "Are you serious?" "I'm sorry. There's a truck stop on 198, about 12 miles. 12 miles? I can't, I've been holding it since Fresno. Please, I'll be quick." She looked at the bathroom doors behind me. They're right there. Rule 4. No exceptions, no real reason, no apology. But she was real. I was almost sure she was real. She had a name badge. She had a car with a parking sticker. She was crying real tears from real tear ducts, and her scrubs had a coffee stain on the left thigh that was exactly the kind of stain a person gets when they set a cup on their leg during a long drive and hit a bump. I almost did it. My hand went to my pocket where the key was. I could feel the brass teeth against my fingertip through the fabric. Then I looked at the maintenance log. My normal cycle entry was there, fresh ink. And below it, appearing as I watched, as if an invisible hand were pressing pen to paper in real time, a new line wrote itself onto the page. The date, the time, 3:22, initials I didn't recognize. And in the condition column, one word, arriving. The water in the men's room surged. The pipes screamed, not groaned, screamed. And I heard something behind the locked door that I will describe as accurately as I can. It sounded like someone stepping out of a bathtub. The wet slap of a bare foot on tile. One step, then another. I turned to the woman in scrubs. "I can't unlock these doors," I said. "I'm sorry. I genuinely can't." She stared at me. The tears had stopped. Her expression shifted from desperation to something harder, not anger exactly, but the kind of blank assessment you see in someone who is deciding whether you are worth any more of their time. "Okay," she said, flat, final. She turned and walked to her car. She got in. She closed the door. She sat there for a moment without starting the engine. And I saw her look not at me, not at the store, but at the east wall, at the bathroom doors. She looked at them the way the man in the Windbreaker had looked at the interior wall, like she was seeing through the building to what was behind it. Then she started the car and drove away. I stood in the parking lot for a long time after that. The water had stopped. The screaming pipes had gone quiet. At 3:52, I unlocked the bathrooms. Both were empty, both clean, both normal. Except the women's room had a new item on the sink. A foam clog, scuffed, slightly stained. Left foot. The same shoe Sarah had been wearing. I put it in the lost and found bin. I need to tell you about the lost and found bin. By night 17, it held. One duffel bag I hadn't opened, one foam clog, one receipt on thermal paper, a pair of sunglasses that predated me, a phone charger that predated me, and a child's left shoe that predated me. Rule 6 said to put things in the bin. Rule 6 said not to describe them in the log. Rule 6 said not to keep them. Rule 6 did not say what to do when the bin started getting heavy. Not heavy like accumulating objects heavy. Heavy like the weight of the objects was changing. The duffel bag I'd placed in the bin on night 9 had been maybe 5 pounds. By night 15, when I nudged the bin with my foot during a slow stretch, it resisted. I pulled the bin out and lifted the bag by its strap, and it was at least 15 pounds. The shape had changed too. Whatever was inside had settled, redistributed, packed itself tighter. The broken zipper on the side pocket had been repaired. Not by me. The teeth were aligned, and the pull tab was intact, shiny, as if someone had replaced it with a new one. I didn't open the bag. I put it back. On night 18, the foam clog was gone. I checked the bin 3 times, pulled everything out, laid it on the floor behind the register. Sunglasses, charger, child's shoe, duffel bag, receipt, no clog, 5 items where there should have been 6. I put everything back and said nothing to Marco when he came in at 7. Night 18 was quiet. Water ran from 3:13 to 3:31. I wrote normal cycle. I did not read the new entries on the log. I unlocked at 3:52 and found nothing unusual in either bathroom. No objects left behind. Both soap dispensers at the same level I'd filled them. Mirrors straight, floors dry. But when I checked the log to flip to a fresh page, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The bottom of the page below the last entry line, in the margin where there shouldn't have been any text, had a small printed line. Not handwritten, printed in a tiny, precise font. The kind you'd see in the footer of a legal document, page 1 of 1. Surface log only for full manifest, see backing. I remembered what Garrett had told me. The backing board, the roster underneath. I lifted the corner of the top page. Under it was the clipboard's backing board, a stiff piece of brown cardboard, the kind that comes standard with any cheap clipboard you'd buy at a dollar store. There were no other pages between the log sheet and the board. But on the surface of the cardboard, printed in that same small, precise font as if it had been manufactured that way, as if the clipboard had come from the factory with this text already on its backing, was a list. Names, dates, times. I dropped the page. I didn't read the list. I want to be clear about that. I saw that it existed. I saw that it was long, maybe 30 or 40 entries, tightly spaced, running in a single column down the center of the board. I saw that some entries had been crossed out with a thin horizontal line, and some had not. But I did not read a single name, a single date, or a single time. I flipped to a fresh page, covered the board, and went inside. I sat behind the register with my hands shaking, not dramatically, not like a movie, but the low, fine tremor you get when your blood sugar drops or when you've been holding something too long. I made coffee and held the cup with both hands and drank it and told myself that a list printed on the back of a clipboard at a gas station in Coalinga, California, was not a real thing. It was a prop. It was Garrett's doing. It was something Phil's family had maintained as part of some insane local tradition, like a time capsule or a memorial. I almost believed it. Then the phone rang. The store phone was a landline mounted on the wall behind the register. Beige plastic, coiled cord, the kind of phone you see in break rooms and auto shops. It had a small digital display that showed the incoming number. The display read, "East Ext bathroom." I looked at it. The phone rang a second time, a third. There was no phone in the bathrooms. There was no phone jack, no extension, no wiring. I knew this because I'd cleaned those rooms every night for 18 nights, and I'd never seen anything in them beyond a toilet, a sink, a mirror, a soap dispenser, a trash can, and a paper towel holder. There was nothing to call from. The phone rang a fourth time. I picked it up. Silence. Not dead air, not the flat void of a disconnected line, but the silence of a large space. The kind of silence you hear in a gymnasium or a cathedral, where the absence of sound has its own texture because of the size of the room containing it. Then a voice. Female. Calm. Not robotic, not ghostly, just calm. The way a receptionist sounds when she said the same phrase 400 times. Confirming overnight clerk for transit window October 18th. Please verify station identifier. I said nothing. Station identifier, the voice repeated. Same tone, same rhythm, patient. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I let it ring. It rang 9 times and stopped. On the display, the caller ID changed. It no longer said East Ext bathroom. It now said, in the same small digital characters, unverified manual hold. It stayed that way for the rest of the night. When Marco came in at 7, the display read idle, same as always. I didn't mention it. Night 19, Garrett called me. Not the other way around. My cell rang at 10:15 p.m., 15 minutes before my shift. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot, eating a granola bar and watching the east wall the way you watch a dog that's bitten someone once. Elena, it's Garrett. Hey, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Okay. Have you looked at the backing board? I chewed, swallowed. I saw it. I didn't read it. You saw the list. I saw that there was a list. I didn't read names or dates. He was quiet for a moment. I could hear road noise on his end. Not highway noise, but the slow, steady hum of a 2-lane at moderate speed. He was driving. That's good, he said. That's actually good. Looking at it and reading it are different. Looking is awareness. Reading is engagement. They're different transactions. Garrett, where are you? Driving. Where? Away from Coalinga. I've been driving since this morning. I'm going to keep driving. Your date is November 19th. You said, I know what I said. I have a month. I'm going to use it to get as far from that station as I can. Does distance matter? Silence. More road noise. Then, I don't know. but the bathrooms are in Coalinga. Whatever route they're part of, it runs through Coalinga. Maybe if I'm far enough away, the route doesn't reach me. I wanted to tell him that sounded reasonable. But I'd heard the phone ring from a room with no phone, and I'd watched a deadbolt pass through a wooden frame like the wood was water. And I'd seen a shoe appear that belonged on the foot of a woman who was standing in front of me at the time it materialized on the sink. Distance felt like a small word suddenly. "Why did you call?" I asked. "Because tonight is going to be different." "Different how?" "The system runs on cycles. Every 18 to 20 shifts, the transit volume spikes. I don't know why schedule maintenance, backlog clearing, some kind of accounting period. When I worked there, every 20th or 21st night, the window got busy. Multiple transits. Water running the whole time. Entries filling up the log faster than you can flip pages. And during those spikes, the system does outreach. Outreach. It sends someone to the store. Not a transit passenger. Something else. Someone whose job it is to verify the clerk. To make sure the station is operational. They'll come inside. They'll browse. They'll make a purchase. And they'll ask you a question. The question will sound normal. It will sound like something any customer would ask. But it's a verification question. They're confirming you know your role. What do I do? Answer it. Whatever they ask, give the normal answer. The customer service answer. Don't be clever. Don't be evasive. Just answer like you're a clerk and they're a customer, and nothing is strange. What happens if I don't? Then you stop being the clerk and you become part of the inventory. He hung up. I sat in my car for another 5 minutes. Then I went inside and started my shift. Night 19 started normally. I restocked. I mopped. The chocolate milkman came at 2 o'clock, bought his pint, and left without a word. 2 truckers filled up between midnight and 1 a.m. A teenager bought a pack of gum at 2:30 and asked if we had an ATM. We didn't. At 3:10, I went outside and checked the bathrooms. Empty, clean. Log showed my last entry from the previous day, nothing else. I went back inside. At 3:13, I locked the deadbolts. At 3:14, the water started. Both rooms. Louder than usual, not just the hiss of open faucets, but a deeper, lower sound, like a main line feeding into both rooms simultaneously. The pipes in the east wall vibrated hard enough that I could see the wall-mounted candy display trembling. The bags of M&Ms and Skittles swaying gently on their hooks. I wrote, "Normal cycle at 3:15. I went back inside. At 3:18, the water got louder. At 3:22, the pipes screamed again that same high metallic shriek from night 17, and then settled into a rhythmic pulsing, on, off, every 4 seconds, like breathing. At 3:24, a car pulled in. It was a beige sedan, clean, nondescript, the kind of car a rental company would give you if you didn't specify a preference. It parked directly in front of the store, precisely centered between the 2 handicap spaces. The engine shut off. The headlights died. No one got out. I watched from the register. The car sat there. I could see a shape in the driver's seat, the silhouette of a person, sitting upright, hands presumably on the wheel or in their lap. Not moving. At 3:27, the driver's door opened. A man got out. He was unremarkable in every specific way that made me notice him. Average height, average build, dark hair, neatly combed, a plain blue button-down shirt tucked into gray slacks, black shoes, recently polished, no jacket despite the cold. He closed the car door gently and walked toward the store entrance. He opened the door, didn't knock, just opened it, the way a normal person would, and stepped inside. "Good morning," he said. "Morning," I said. He walked the aisles, slowly, deliberately, looking at each shelf the way a person does in a store they've never been in before. He picked up a bag of beef jerky, looked at the nutrition label, set it back. He picked up a bottle of water, looked at the cap, set it back. He picked up a road atlas from the spinner rack near the door, the kind no one buys anymore, a Rand McNally spiral bound, and brought it to the counter. "Just this," he said. I scanned it. $14.99. He pulled out a leather wallet, brown, no brand, and handed me a 20. I made change, a 5 and a penny. I put the atlas in a plastic bag. He took the bag. He stood at the counter. "Busy night?" he said. Here it was, the verification question. Garrett had said it would sound normal. Whatever they ask, give the normal answer. "Not really," I said. "Pretty quiet." "That's good. Quiet's good on a night shift." He smiled. Same kind of unremarkable, polite smile. "How long have you been working here?" "About 3 weeks." "Like it?" "It's a job." He nodded. He looked around the store, not at the shelves this time, but at the structure. The walls, the ceiling tiles, the fluorescent fixtures, the cameras in their dark plastic domes. "Good station," he said. "Clean, well maintained. You can tell when someone takes the job seriously." "Thank you." He looked at me. Direct eye contact. His eyes were brown, and they were ordinary, and they were the most attentive eyes I've ever seen. Not intense, not predatory. Attentive. The way a camera lens is attentive. It doesn't feel anything about what it's recording, but it records everything. "The restrooms," he said. "Are they available?" My hand was on the counter. My fingers didn't move. "Plumbing's out tonight," I said. "Should be fixed by morning." He held eye contact for one more second. Then he nodded. "Understood," he said. "Have a good rest of your shift." He took the plastic bag, walked to the door, pushed it open, and crossed the parking lot to his car. He got in. The engine started. The headlights came on. He pulled out of the space, turned right onto Polk Street, and drove west. I watched his taillights until they were gone. Then I exhaled. I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath. On the counter, where he'd been standing, there was a penny. Not the penny from his change. I'd given him 1 penny. And it was in his hand when he picked up the bag. This was a second penny. It was sitting on the counter, tails up. I picked it up. It was warm, not body temperature warm, but warm the way metal gets when it's been sitting near a heat source. The date on it was 2019. I turned it over. The head side didn't have Lincoln on it. It had a face I didn't recognize, a woman, in profile, with her hair pulled back. Below the portrait, where Liberty should have been, it said, "Verified." So I put the penny in the lost and found bin. At 3:52, I unlocked the bathrooms. Both were wet, not damp, wet. Standing water on both floors, a 1/4 inch deep, clear, no odor. The faucets were off. The toilets were still. The water had no apparent source. The maintenance log had 6 new entries below my normal cycle line. 6 transits in one night. I did not read them. I flipped the page. Fresh sheet. I mopped the bathrooms. I finished my shift. Night 20. This was the night I broke Rule 5. I need to tell you why, because curiosity isn't the right word. Curiosity is what you feel about a locked room or an unopened letter. What I felt by night 20 was closer to obligation, in the sense that I was participating in something I didn't understand, and that my ignorance wasn't protecting me, was protecting the system. Every time I flipped the page without reading, I was performing a function. I was being a good toll booth arm. I was going up and down on schedule, and the cars were passing through. And I was the only part of the machine that didn't know where they were going. Garrett had said the rules were insulation, but insulation works both ways. It keeps the cold out, and it keeps the heat in. By not reading the log, I was insulating the system from scrutiny. I was making it easy for whatever used those bathrooms to operate without witnesses. And after the phone call, the voice asking me to verify the station identifier, and after the man with the atlas and his verification questions and his impossible penny, I had the distinct, nauseating sense that my ignorance was what made me useful. That the system didn't need me to understand it. It needed me to not understand it. My compliance was a resource. My silence was a product. So on night 20 at 3:52, when I unlocked the bathrooms and found them empty and clean and dry, I looked at the maintenance log. There were 2 new entries below my normal cycle line. I read them. The first entry, October 20th, 3:17 a.m. REM. Processed outbound standard. The second entry, October 20th, 3:34 a.m. No initials. Clerk inquiry. Logged ref EV-0005. C backing. I stared at the second entry. Clerk inquiry logged. Not a transit, not a processing note, a record of me. EV, my initials. 0005. 5 what? 5 inquiries, 5 rule breaks, 5 instances of attention. REF EV-0005. C backing. I lifted the page. The roster was still there on the backing board, printed in that same tiny, precise font. 30 or 40 entries in a single column, most crossed out. I'd avoided reading it before. This time, I read it. The crossed-out names meant nothing to me. Initials and dates, some going back decades. GH, November 19th, 2024. That was Garrett. His date, November 19th. His entry was not yet crossed out. I scanned down the list. Most of the remaining uncrossed entries had dates in the future weeks, months, years ahead. Names I didn't recognize. Initials paired with dates the way you'd pair appointments in a calendar. Near the bottom of the list, in the last quarter, there was a new entry. It had not been there on night 18. I was sure of this because on night 18, when I'd glimpsed the list without reading it, the bottom of the column had ended with a short gap before the edge of the cardboard. Now the column was longer. A new line had been added. It read, EV, March 7th, 2025, 3:13 a.m. inbound, my initials, a date 5 months in the future, the exact time of lockout, and a direction I hadn't seen on any other entry. Every transit entry I'd glimpsed on the surface log said outbound or standard. This one said inbound. I put the page down. I hung the clipboard on the hook. I walked back inside the store and I stood behind the register and I pressed my hands flat against the counter and I breathed. The store was quiet. The fluorescents buzzed. The coffee machine gurgled in its idle cycle. Outside, the parking lot was empty, the pumps dark, the road bare. On the counter, the register's small receipt printer clicked. It shouldn't have. The register was idle. No transaction was open. No sale had been entered. The printer's green ready light was on, and the thermal paper was feeding slowly, an inch at a time, the way it does when printing a long receipt. I watched it print. The text appeared line by line. Station Coalinga Polk / Unit ID 33- East Transit Window. October 20th, 3:13 to 3:52 a.m. Clerk on duty. Voss, Elena E. V. Surface transactions. 2 clerk inquiries. 5 cumulative. Status threshold. Met notice. Clerk. EV has been reclassified. Previous designation. Active clerk insulated current designation. Registered passenger inbound. Transit date. March 7th, 2025 boarding time. 3:13 a.m. Assigned facility. F-East. Women's. 5 inquiry events recorded. 1. October 7th. Log grid surface. Soap fault. 2. October 14th. Receipt retrieved. F-East sink. 3. October 18th. Backing board observed. No read. 4. October 18th. Phone contact. Unverified. No response. 5. October 20th. Log read surface. Plus backing board read. Full. Note. Inquiry 3 was counted as half event. Note. Inquiry 4 was counted as half event. Threshold is 5 full events. Threshold was met at Inquiry 5. Thank you for your service at this station. Your transit has been scheduled. Please do not attempt to transfer, resign, or vacate. Your facility has been assigned. Your boarding time is fixed. Next. Clerk. Pending assignment. Station status. Operational manifest updated. The printer stopped. The receipt hung from the slot, curling slightly in the warm air. I tore it off. I read it twice. I read it a third time. I held it under the fluorescent light and looked at every letter and number as if I could find the seam, the point where reality ended and this started, and I could not find it. 5 inquiries. They had counted every time I'd paid attention, every glance at the log, every receipt I'd picked up, even the moments I'd almost engaged, seeing the backing board without reading it. Picking up the phone without answering the verification question counted as half events. I had been running a tab I didn't know existed, and tonight I'd paid it in full. I looked at the date again. March 7th, 2025. 5 months away. Inbound. Every transit I'd seen recorded was outbound. Passengers leaving through the bathrooms, going somewhere else. But my entry said inbound. I wasn't leaving through the bathrooms. I was arriving. I finished the shift. I don't know how. I restocked the cooler. I cleaned the coffee machine. I emptied the trash. I did these things the way your body does things, when your mind has disconnected from the controls, muscle memory, and routine carrying you through the hours like a car coasting downhill in neutral. At 7 o'clock, Marco came in. "Morning," he said. "Morning." He started his routine. I stood at the register and watched him, and I thought about telling him. I thought about showing him the receipt, the log, the lost and found bin with its duffel bag that was gaining weight on its own, and its impossible penny, and its child's shoe, and Garrett's number, and the whole wretched architecture of the thing. But Marco was 21. He worked mornings. He'd never locked the bathrooms at 3:13 because he was never here at 3:13. The system didn't know his name. And if I told him, if I made him curious, I would be doing to him what the system had done to me. Counting his attention, starting his tab. "See you tonight," I said. "Yeah. Hey, Elena." "What?" "Someone left a road atlas in the break room. Rand McNally. That yours?" I stopped. I hadn't put an atlas in the break room. The man from Night 19 had bought an atlas. He'd taken it with him. I'd watched him leave with the plastic bag in his hand. "No," I said, "not mine." "Cool. I'll toss it in lost and found." "Don't," I said. He looked at me. "Don't put anything in the lost and found," I said. "Just leave it where it is." He shrugged. "Okay." I left. I drove home. I sat in my apartment. I called Garrett. The number was disconnected. I called it 4 more times over the next hour. Same result. A 3-tone chime and a recording. The number you have dialed is not in service. I pulled up a browser on my phone and searched his name. Garrett Hewell, Coalinga. Nothing useful, a few white pages results. A disconnected LinkedIn profile with no photo. No social media, no news articles, no obituary, which I told myself was a good sign because his date was November 19th and it was still October. Then I searched the station. Citgo, Polk Street, Coalinga, California. The listing came up: address, hours, phone number. A single Google review from 2 years ago that said clean bathrooms, fair prices, nothing unusual. But below the main listing, in the related results, there was a news article from the Coalinga Record, dated 2009. The headline read, "Local business owner's brother found dead at Polk Street gas station." I tapped it. The article was short. Philip Romer Sr.'s brother, David Romer, had been found dead in the men's bathroom of the Texaco station, now Citgo, on Polk Street on March 7, 2009. Cause of death was listed as cardiac arrest. He was 52. He had been found at approximately 4 a.m. by the overnight clerk, who had reported hearing water running for an extended period and had gone to check. The clerk's name was not listed. The date was March 7th. My date was March 7th. The bathroom was the men's room. My assignment was the women's room. F East. Same wall, same building, same date, different room. David Romer had gone inbound 16 years before me. I worked 2 more nights. I don't know why. Momentum, maybe. The gravitational pull of routine. Or maybe it was the same logic that keeps people driving toward a city they know is flooded. The sense that stopping would mean admitting the road behind you is gone too. Night 21 was quiet. Water ran from 3:13 to 3:40. I wrote normal cycle. I did not check the log. I did not look at the backing board. I did not touch the lost and found bin. I unlocked at 3:52 and walked away from the bathrooms without entering them. I let Marco deal with whatever was inside when he arrived. Night 22 was my last shift. At 2 a.m., the chocolate milkman came in. Same routine: walked to the cooler, grabbed a pint of Highland chocolate milk, brought it to the counter. He was maybe 70, thin, with the kind of face that could be any ethnicity and any age depending on the light. He'd come in every night I'd worked there and had never spoken. Tonight, he spoke. "You're leaving," he said. I rang up the milk. $2.49. He placed exact change on the counter. $2 bills, a quarter, 2 dimes, and 4 pennies. Same as always. Exact change every single time. "I'm thinking about it," I said. "You should." He picked up the milk. The last clerk who stayed after being scheduled, that was David, Phil's brother. He thought if he stayed on as clerk, the system would keep counting him as staff instead of passenger. He thought he could outrank his own transit. I stared at him. "He couldn't," the old man said. "The schedule is the schedule. But at least if you leave, you'll be somewhere else when it happens. Somewhere familiar. It doesn't change the date. But it changes the room." "What do you mean it changes the room?" "If you're here, you transit through the assigned facility, F-East. The women's room. If you're somewhere else, home, a motel, a hospital, wherever the system adapts, it finds the nearest threshold. A bathroom door, a closet, any room with a door and running water. It's less efficient, slower. Some people say it hurts less." He turned the chocolate milk over in his hands like he was reading the label, though his eyes weren't on it. "The station is a hub. Transiting through the hub is instant. Transiting through a secondary threshold is not. That's all I can tell you. I'm not supposed to tell you that much. Who are you? He smiled. First time I'd seen him smile. It was a kind smile. The kind old men give when they're telling you something they wish someone had told them. I'm a regular, he said. He left. He walked out the door and turned right toward the road, and I watched through the window. And he did not get into a car. He walked to the edge of the parking lot where the asphalt met the scrubland, and he kept walking, straight out into the dark, and the shadows took him before he'd gone 20 feet. I clocked out at 3 a.m. I didn't lock the bathrooms. I didn't write normal cycle. I didn't wait for 3:13 or 3:52 or any of the times that had been organizing my life for 22 days. I left the laminated card taped to the register. I left the lost and found bin under the counter. I left the maintenance log on its hook between the 2 bathroom doors. I drove home. I packed a bag. Not a duffel, a suitcase. Wheeled, the one I'd used when I moved back from Sacramento. I packed clothes, documents, my laptop, chargers, toiletries. I packed the way you pack when you're not coming back. At 6 a.m., I called Dana, the regional manager, and quit. She asked if I could give 2 weeks. I said no. She asked if something had happened. I said the shift wasn't a good fit. She said she understood. I drove east that morning. I didn't have a destination. I had a direction away from Coalinga, away from Polk Street, away from the east wall and the clipboard and the rooms that weren't connected to any water main. I drove to Bakersfield first, then turned south. I spent a night in a motel in Tehachapi, and I made sure the room had a shower stall with a curtain, no door, no enclosed space with a lock and running water. I showered with the curtain open and the bathroom door propped wide. The next day, I drove to Barstow, then Needles, then across the Arizona border to Kingman, where I found a weekly rate at a motel and decided to stop moving for a while. That was 4 months ago. It is now February. March 7th is 27 days away. I want to tell you I've been fine. I want to tell you nothing has followed me. I want to tell you that distance works, that the route runs through Coalinga and only through Coalinga, and that 1,200 miles of desert between me and that station is enough to make the schedule irrelevant. But 3 nights ago, at 3:13 in the morning, the faucet in my motel bathroom turned on by itself. Just for a second. A brief, full pressure burst, the sound of a tap opening and closing in less than a heartbeat, like someone testing the line, checking the connection, making sure the water ran. I got up and looked. The faucet was off. The basin was dry. Nothing was wrong. But on the mirror, in the steam that shouldn't have been there from a faucet that ran for less than 1 second, there was a single line of condensation. Not written with a finger, not smeared, formed in the fog itself, as if the moisture had gathered preferentially into the shape of letters. Boarding confirmation, IV, March 7th, 3:13 a.m. I wiped the mirror. I turned on every light. I sat on the bed with my back to the headboard and my eyes on the bathroom door until the sun came up. I'm telling you this because I don't know what else to do. I've thought about Garrett, driving somewhere, maybe still driving, maybe running out of road. His date was November 19th, and it's February now. And I don't know if he made it or if he's an entry on the backing board with a line through his name. I can't call him. His number is dead. I searched for an obituary last week and found nothing, which means either he's alive or he died somewhere nobody noticed, which in a town like Coalinga, in a system like this, might be the same thing. I've thought about David Romer, who died in the men's room on March 7th, 2009, and who was classified, I now believe, as inbound, who arrived through the bathroom, who transited into whatever the bathrooms connect to, and whose body was left behind like luggage at a gate. Cardiac arrest, the coroner said. The organs stop. The passenger departs. The body is just the container. I've thought about the woman in scrubs, Sarah, from Central Valley Veterinary, who cried real tears and whose shoe appeared on the sink. I've thought about whether she was real or whether she was a transit passenger presenting as a living person. The way the man in the Windbreaker presented as a customer. The way the verification man presented as a shopper buying an atlas, he'd eventually return to the break room without ever re-entering the building. I've thought about the chocolate milkman and what he meant by regular. Whether he was a passenger who transited so often he'd become part of the station's rhythm. Whether the dead can become frequent flyers. I've thought about the receipt, still in the lost and found bin, or wherever it is now, with my name on it and my date and the word inbound. I've thought about what it means that the system printed that receipt through a register that had no open transaction, that it used the store's own equipment, its own printer, its own thermal paper to issue a boarding pass, that the station is not haunted, it is operational, it is a functioning terminal, and the clerk is not a victim. The clerk is ground crew. And I've thought about the 5 inquiry threshold. 5 moments of attention, 5 instances of curiosity, 5 times I looked when I should have turned away. The system counted them the way a store counts shoplifting incidents before pressing charges. There was a limit, and I crossed it. And now I'm in the manifest. It's 2:48 a.m. here in Kingman. I'm sitting in the motel room with the bathroom light on and the door open. The faucet hasn't turned on again since 3 nights ago. But the maintenance log, I took the clipboard, the one I grabbed off the hook on my last night, the one I told you I left behind, but didn't. Because I lied about that. The way I've lied to myself about a lot of things, since October is sitting on the desk across from me. I shouldn't have taken it. I know that. Taking it was a 6th inquiry, if the system is still counting. And maybe it is. Maybe there's no threshold after the first one. Maybe 5 gets you scheduled and 6 gets you something worse. But I took it because of what I saw on the backing board that I haven't told you about yet. Below my entry, below EV, March 7th, 2025, 3:13 a.m. inbound, there was one more line. A new entry, added sometime between night 20 and night 22, in the same printed font, at the bottom of the roster. It didn't have initials. It didn't have a date. It didn't have a direction. It said, Reader, pending. Inbound upon completion. I didn't know what it meant then. I think I know what it means now. The story is the threshold. You've been paying attention. You've been following the rules with me, locking the doors, listening for the water, reading the log entries I told you I didn't read. Every detail I gave you was an inquiry. Every question you had, why 3:13? What's in the duffel bag? What happened to Garrett was counted. I don't know how many it takes for you. I don't know if the threshold is the same for readers as it is for clerks. Maybe it's 5. Maybe it's less. Maybe just finishing the story is enough. But if you hear water running tonight in your bathroom, in your kitchen, in the pipes behind the wall, I want you to know it doesn't mean anything is broken. It means the plumbing works. It means the route is open, and someone is checking the connection.